All right, so welcome. Today we're going to be looking at the May-June 2025 Agricultural Science Single Award Paper 2. We're going to be answering the questions, we're going to be having a discussion, we're going to be preparing you for this year exam. Yes, I'm Mr. Thomas, and so welcome to Buckle Down Tutoring Services, where we do videos related to the science subjects. So we're diving right into it. Now, Lillian recently graduated from high school and lives at home with her parents. She has just completed an agricultural training course and wants to start a mixed farming enterprise. Of course, you know, mixed farming would have been an enterprise that has both animals and plants, crops. You know, you're not supposed to get it confused with mixed cropping, which is a growing of various different crops on the same enterprise. Lillian's friend advises her that she will need capital. You know, capital is the money that you need to start up a business, you know, to start her farm, and suggests that she try to obtain a loan from the Agricultural Credit Bank. You know, these are institutions that would have been providing loans to a young entrepreneur like Lillian or farmers. Lillian is not sure if she will qualify for a loan from the bank for her mixed farm enterprise. List 3 documents that Lillian needs to provide to the Agricultural Credit Bank when she is applying for the loan. So we're diving right into it. So one of the things that Lillian would have to provide is proof of identity. So Lillian needs to show that she is who she says she is. So either a passport, an ID, something to prove that she is who she says she is. The other thing that the Agricultural Credit Bank will definitely require would have been some form of proposal or business plan. So a business plan would have been an outline of what is her goals and what is it that how she plans to execute and have a successful business. The business plan is important. It's convincing the entity that you are able to, you know, make a profit when you start a business. So either a business plan or a farm proposal could have been the second thing that she would need. Now, the other thing that she would have maybe require is what we call collateral, and that is like things that she own. As you know, you can actually put it up when you borrow against the value of that item. So if she has a car, have a house, have something of value, it can stand security for the loan. So these are 3 things that Lillian would have been, you know, required. She could be a registration to a local farming enterprise that registers farmer. In Jamaica, we have the RADA. So she could be registered for proof of registration with the local agricultural entity that is there to supervise, you know, farmers. So in Jamaica, we say that's RADA. One of the things this will do is to help her to ensure that she, again, along with the proof of identity, would have been registered with this corporation, government institution, and that would have given her a better chance of obtaining a loan. So when you look at Lillian, part 2 says, Lillian provided all the required documents to the bank, but the loan was not approved. Suggests 2 reasons why the bank may not have approved Lillian's loan. So one of the reasons could have been experience. So she may not have the required experience. She's a young farmer. She just graduated from university, or she did a course, and so lack of experience could be a factor that was considered. What does she know about, cultivating or operating a mixed farming enterprise? Agriculture is a business, and it is very important that Lillian would have been able to be successful, because the bank would have wanted a situation that she's able to repay the loan. One of the things is your ability to repay. So if they see that the chances are low, then they may withdraw. Another thing that she might have an issue with is sufficient collateral. So she's young, and of course, so she may not have had the chance to acquire any form of collateral over the years. And so that in itself can be a deterrent. Persons who are lending you, organizations that are lending money, would want to know that, Lillian, hey, you can pay back that loan. If you can't pay back that loan, then they will be hesitant in providing her with that loan. Another thing that you can add, credit history. Now, the thing about this, one thing you should know, and even this is a life experience in terms of going out there, if you're a new borrower, and of course Lillian is the first time she's borrowing from the bank, then of course they may be hesitant again because there's no history. If somebody comes to you and borrow money and they give you back in the time frame that they said they would, the next time that they come to maybe borrow money, you'll be more open. But if outside of that a new individual comes up to you and say, lend me some money till next week, till month end, you might be hesitant because you're not familiar with this person's credit history. So the credit history that she has is not one that she doesn't really have any credit history. So there's no record of her borrowing money and completing. So there's something called good credit score. And so when you borrow the money, you pay back on time and in the correct amount. It says state 2 other sources of funding that Lillian can consider in order to obtain capital. So outside of the agricultural credit bank, Lillian can actually ask family members. / friends. So friends, family members, she can go to them to source that loan. She can, not only the agricultural, she can probably go to a commercial bank, but the drawback to the commercial bank, the interest rates are going to be high. And of course, we also call them loan sharks. And definitely their interest is going to also be very high. So the option is family member. She can go to a commercial bank. She can go to a loan shark. So these persons they would provide, these institutions will provide her with a loan, but they come with certain stipulation like a high interest rate. And so that's where she can go. Family members can also help her. Maybe Lillian could go to her mother, father, uncle, somebody who has the funds that could assist her in, starting the enterprise that she wants to. The next question says, a country has a large number of farmers who produce fruits and vegetables. For the population. The Ministry of Agriculture has just announced that it will allow the importation of agricultural produce all year round. So just two reasons why the Ministry of Agriculture decided to allow the importation of agricultural produce all year round. So this is something that the Caribbean countries, even countries like Jamaica, Trinidad, they sometimes allow the importation of food items. And you might be wondering, but we have farmers who are doing their farming locally. And so it is done to, one, ensure food security. And really and truly, when we speak about food security, is to ensure that there's a consistent, and we want to use that word, there would be a consistent supply of food. So even if farmers who are doing their farming locally happen to fall short in making meeting the demand of the country, they would still have food supply such as vegetables, chicken, you name it, meat. And so you might look at it and say it's a negative, it will hit the local farmers, but there's a positive to it. You will have that consistent food supply, that food security. So that's one of the reasons that the government of a country will actually do that. They also do it to increase competition. And by increasing competition, it is looking at its citizens, the citizens of the country. When you import, and even though we're talking about the farmers' livelihood who are local, when you import, it causes the local farmer to even have a lower cost. And so the citizens of a country will have a less burden when it comes on to food prices, because at times food prices will soar based on what is happening. So if you have competition where importation of a particular good or a food item is coming into a country, the local will have to match the price so that they can actually, have sales. But by doing so, they have to lower their price, and it eases the burden on the citizens, giving them a better chance in terms of saving on the high prices that would have been there if local farmers really have the country, at their will. So it is positive in those two ways. State one challenge of promoting imported food as opposed to local produced food. And as we said, when we promote imported food, there would be a reduction. So there's a reduction in the purchase of the local items by the members of the country. And so how is that? Why is that an issue? Remember, as I said before, these local farmers, it would have been their livelihood, and so it is what that's how they earn a living. So even though it is something that would have been helpful in terms of food security, the local farmers would feel a burden because usually the imported prices are lower. So this is one of the challenge that would have happened. You know, some countries like Jamaica, what they would have done is to have their eat local produce campaign. So they campaign about buying local produce instead of buying the imported ones. So there has to be a balance. While we import, we have to remember that the local farmers are really there and they're benefiting when their products are being sold or being purchased by the citizens of a country. If that does not happen, the profit that they would have obtained, their revenue is going to be low. State one way in which a budget can be used for decision making. So we know that a budget is a decision making tool. And so what it would really do is to present information about an enterprise, the aspect of it that is doing well. So when you do a budget, you can zero in and you can see an aspect of your business, farming enterprise. Say you have a mixed farm, the amount of money that or revenue that you will acquire from. So it will help you to make decision in terms of purchase and expansion. So expansion of your farm. So what it will do in terms of so which aspect of the business is going to be profitable, and you can zero in on that aspect as a means of, you know, where you should allocate your funds for your business. So once you know that, hey, the go-tree aspect is of, you know, you're seeing that it's going to have a high revenue, then you can actually know where to put your resources so that you can make as much profit as possible. So we say it's a decision-making tool. Where is it that we need to allocate? Where we need to remove some of the resources that we have, something in our business that is not operating. Maybe we need to close an area. If the cattle is not producing enough milk and you're running at a loss, then it shows that, hey, you have to make a decision to not put any resources or limit the resources there and put the resources in the go-tree where you're actually going to make a higher revenue. So it allows you to maximize profit. It says differentiate between a partial budget and a complete budget. So once you're doing a partial budget, you're making an adjustment to maybe one aspect of your farm or your business. So when you're making an adjustment to just an aspect of the business, that would have been partial. So as we look, we said that we're focusing on a change in terms of a partial budget, a modification to just an aspect, right? A specific area. While a complete budget, it's a comprehensive analysis of all the parts of your business. So we're taking into consideration every single return and cost of all aspects of the business, and then you would have, you know, made a decision based on that. So here we have Farmer Rajak, who operates a vegetable farm He wants to know whether he should expand his operation. His accountant has prepared a budget for a 3-year period to allow Farmer Rajak to make a decision. So when we look at the sales, we see in the first year he made $10,000. Second year we made 12,000, and of course in the third year $14,000. The variable costs 4,000, 8,000, 12,000. The gross margin would have been 6,000, 4,000, and 2,000. Fixed costs, it remained constant over the 3-year period. Net profit would have decreased from 2,000 to 0 in the second year, and then of course he started to make a loss. Now, using the information in table 1, describe one challenge that farmer Rajak could face if he decides to expand the farm. So obviously his variable cost is increasing, and once that is increasing, he's not seeing a great increase in his sales, and so that will create a problem. So you find that the variable cost is increasing higher or at a higher rate than his sales. So while he had some increase in the sales, his variable cost is actually increasing more, and that will cause to experience a loss in the third year in terms of net profit. So so he experienced a loss in the third year. And you know that would affect his net profit. So right there and then, that is the situation. It says state 2 possible solutions for addressing the challenge identified. So one of the things that is creating the problem is his variable cost. So he needs to look at production and analyze where he can improve. And one of the things that usually technology. So technology is one of the main ways that we sometimes use. Technology will allow you to save money, make you more efficient, and so that variable cost that is experiencing that increase will actually stay low, and thus he could actually make more profit. Now, because he's doing a And as we said, he's doing a mixed vegetable. You can he would be advised. So if it is that he's growing he's operating a mixed farm in terms of growing different vegetables, if he realizes that cucumbers are giving him a higher income than okra, then his focus may have to just be cucumbers, because that is where proper analyzing his business, the farm, to see where his profit, and so he can actually allocate his attention, put his attention into that crop that is giving him the highest return, and focus on that crop. The Minister of Agriculture is concerned about the impact of climate change on farmers in the country. She wants to promote hydroponics. Now, hydroponics, as you may know, hydro mean water, ponics mean working, and so this is really a system where plants are grown in nutrient solution instead of the soil. And it is a growing trend in the agriculture. We have vertical hydroponic system being implemented in countries across the Caribbean. So among farmers, the cultivation of vegetables through the year. And even in the previous question, we said that he could focus on these technology, and that would have helped him. Suggest 3 incentives that could be provided to farmers to encourage them to utilize hydroponics in their farm enterprise. Now, hydroponics, one of the things that I would want you to do as a student when you're approaching the question, so if you want to encourage something, sometimes you have to look at the negative that surrounds it and try to alleviate that. So farmers, hydroponics, the setup cost is very high. And so what the government can do is to provide grants or loans. So you want persons to start to invest or start to utilize this method of growing plants or crops. Get them the money, because it is a high cost setup, and so you would want them to be able to sustain their hydroponic system over the years, but some of them cannot get that funding to start. So you can provide grants or loans or even the capital to purchase inputs, and that in itself. Training. Now, government would want to provide training. The concept of hydroponics, since you're not in the soil, you have to ensure, and it's based on the type of crop, based on the size of the hydroponics, how much nutrients are needed by the plants, and in what form and in what mixture. So you have to mix that nutrient solution, and this requires some form of technical knowledge. So if you want persons to go into hydroponics, you would have to do training sessions, and these can be free. So free, not just to cause them to pay again, because again, the farmers already had the high cost to purchase the system and then to pay for learning how to use it. So free training or extension services. Sometimes you just need and again, like I speak about the RADA in Jamaica, sometimes you just need the help from our assistance to really overcome the challenges you're having with the technology. So, until you know how to do it, you may just think that, the hydroponics are foolishness. But really and truly, you have no knowledge of how to utilize the concept. So having extension service would have been a plus to the farmers. The next thing that the government can do, and I said, when we're looking at this question, we're looking at the challenges with hydroponics. Now, a part of hydroponics is that it relies on water. It relies on water, even though the water is efficiently used, especially in the NFT system where it is recycled. You have other methods that are not so water efficient, and so your water could be at a high cost. You would have to ensure that there might be timers, but they would include pumps. So in terms of the government could remove tax to these farmers. In Jamaica, when I think JPS, right? So removing tax and so tax on electricity will help ease the burden, because the pump, even though it's not operating on a continuous basis, it will be at different intervals. It still uses electricity, and so that in itself, if the farmer can get some ease in terms of the burden on electricity or even water, so tax on electricity and water be removed or they get exemption, then that would be good to remember. We're trying to encourage them. So we look at the negative things that would have give them a push from the hydroponics. So now that we see these, all of these will now be pull factors. So it have a high cost, but guess what? We're willing to give you a loan. We're willing to provide you with grants so that you can afford the capital. You can obtain the capital to buy the inputs. The soluble fertilizers are very expensive. You have a disadvantage. How do you go about mixing the chemical to sustain your hydroponic system? Yes, the government will provide free training and support service, extension service to everyone who decides to, move towards this method of farming. What? Light bill is a problem? Even some things of introducing alternative means, so such as solar to farmers, give them some form of solar pump or solar kit, something to encourage them so that they will utilize the method that you want them to do. They say encouragement sweetens labor, and definitely if you're a farmer, you see these coming out, would have jumped towards hydroponics. Not true? Farmer Joy, and I'm sure this farmer is not going to be happy with the pictures that I'm seeing down here. Joy Hush. Joy is a vegetable farmer who recently started cultivating string beans during the rainy season. She observed that her yields were low. And when we talk about yield, we're talking about the kilogram, the mass that they get at the end of the harvesting. So it was low. Make no sense to Joy. Yeah, in Jamaican terms, we say that little bit. Yeah, so little bit of yield. And that the bean plot was overrun with pests and diseases. So, pests and diseases, what they will do, pathogens, pests, they interrupt the cycles of the plant. They disrupt how the plants can actually carry out the necessary processes. And with that, it's going to affect food production by the plant, photosynthesis, and other metabolic activities within the plants. And so that is what is leading to, maybe would have been leading to her low yield. The agricultural extension officer, yeah, wonderful, visited Joy's farm and observed the pests shown in figure 1 and figure 2 among her bean crop. Whoa, look at these ants. We call it the cutters. So we see the cutters, and of course these look like white, they look like insects, they look like aphids. Aphids are sucking the ants there. They are leaf cutters. They cut and they utilize the leaves of the plant. So we said identify the pests shown in figure 1 and figure 2 on page 10. And so we said leaf cutters, aphids. The pests in figure 1 and figure 2 on page 10 are classified based on how they feed on the plant. Name the group that the pests in figure 1 belong to. So we said that they would be cutting insects. The agricultural extension officer also told Joy that, hey, her bean plants were infected with powdery mildew. Other than a decrease in yield, state one symptom of powdery mildew in string bean. And of course, powdery mildew is actually caused by a virus. And one of the symptoms mean what you will physically see on her plant. You will see some white powder, patches of powder. So just two ways in which powdery mildew spores can be transmitted or spread throughout Farmer Joy's vegetable farm. No, definitely the spores are actually, they're very light in weight. And so some of what would have caused a result, if you, especially if Joy is experiencing a increase in wind speed, these spores can be dispersed by the wind, so they carry from infected plants and they land on uninfected plants, and the disease is spread like that. You can have what we call the concept of the workers or the tools that they use. So physical, physical transfer of the spores, and this is done by the workers. The tools that they're using. So if the workers, even their clothing. So we want you to put in terms of a sentence construction. So the physical, when the farmers are carrying out the different agricultural activities that are needed to be done on the string bean, whether molding, whether fertilizing, if they're using tools, if they're physical contact with plants that would have had the spores of this powdery mildew, and they go into areas where plants did not have these, they can be the transmission. So right there and then, the farmer or the workers, they're actually acting like, vectors to help spread that disease. So the spores can fall on their clothing. It can be on a tool, a cutlass, a pruning shear, something that we're using with the farm or on the farm to help to maintain and carry out different agricultural activities. But those, while we're doing that, moving through, the transmission of the disease could have occurred. So it says outline 2 cultural methods. And bear in mind, cultural, it didn't say chemical. We're not using any form of chemical. So what are some of the activities that the farmer can do to control the mildew in her bean crop? You must provide one reason for the use of each method. So improved spacing or increase the spacing, right? So with less dense. Now what that will do is increase airflow. By increasing airflow, you know that we have moisture in the atmosphere. So the moisture in the atmosphere and we call that humidity will be allowed to be reduced. Now, one of the things why we're looking at reducing the moisture, if you know anything about fungal infection, you know that they strive best in a moist environment. So by planting, by having a more dense planting system, you find that there's less air circulation happening. If the air is not circulating properly, it is going to increase humidity. Humidity is the amount of water in the air around the leaves of the plant. And if you have that constant water around the leaves of the plant, and we should know that we have to be careful, even when you're watering, you would want to water at the root. You will increase the chances. You are now creating that environment for the virus to strive. Every disease, we have what we call a disease triangle. There, if you're going to control the disease, you either look at the host, you look at, the lady want to grow a string bean. Not true. So we can better take out the host like that. And maybe for the next one, next method, we can talk a little bit about that. We want to really talk about the environment, and we also have the pathogen, the causative agent of the disease. So one of the major things we can do as a farmer or humans, we tend to look at the environment. And so if we increase airflow between the plants, we reduce humidity, thus reducing the water content, the moisture content, and that will help. The next thing that we can do is crop rotation. Now, some of these disease and pests, they are host specific, meaning they will strive best when you plant a certain crop. So if you have a string bean and you plant another crop like tomato that is also likely to be affected by the powdery mildew, then you're going to find yourself into the same situation. But if you practice crop rotation, one of the things that we do is to plant dissimilar crops, crops that are not similar in terms of their family and their growth patterns. And by rotating the crop, what you will do is to break the life cycle. So you break the life cycle of the disease. So in this case, it's like, you had the food there and you don't have the food anymore. What that will do, yes, the spores will be there. And again, cultural practices, they're not so effective as maybe your chemical. But what's the benefit is that you're not harming the environment. So, questions could have been asked along that particular line. So we choose cultural. We also have this system where we call IPM, integrated pest management. And of course, chemical is the last resort. So we want to practice crop rotation. It breaks the life cycle by planting dissimilar crops in sequence on the same plot of land. Now, a recent field trip to Mountain View Watershed Training Center, the forester stated that hilly areas are more prone to soil erosion than flatter areas. He also explained that soil erosion can be controlled with good soil and water management practices. It says define the term soil erosion. And so this is the removal of the topsoil due to the action of wind and water. It says name 2 agents of soil erosion in the Caribbean. And even up there, we just named the agents. These are things that would have caused soil erosion, and 2 would have been wind and water. Activities of man, we call that accelerated erosion. When we do things to enhance the washing away or the blowing away of the soil, one of the things that we do is deforestation, mining. When we go in and leave the context of the soil bare. So outline one effect of soil erosion on crop production. Definitely, if the topsoil is removed, then the nutrient content, and to be specific, the soil fertility will decrease. And so if the soil the fertility of the soil decrease, we will have lower yield. As we said, the yield refers to the amount that you obtain after your harvest. So once you have soil erosion happening, you see, because the few first 15 inches of your soil, that's where you have that rich nutrient. And if that is washed away, then the nutrients out of the soil is gone. And so for soil fertility, the nutrients are needed by the plants to carry out the necessary function and to produce food. And hence, if that is gone, then you're going to experience lower yield. Explain one cause of soil erosion in hillside area. Now, the hill, the steeper the slope, the faster the runoff. So one of the things about the soil erosion, 2 things we aim at doing when we are even controlling it, because we can't prevent it. The soil will always be washed away or blown away, but we can reduce the intensity of how this is done. Now on sloping land, because the soil is going to be removed by runoff water, the faster the water is moving, the more soil it can take. So you'll be surprised that running water has that damaging effect. It's very, very destructive as it's moving across the surface of the soil. It can even cause channels to be formed, and these channels would will be small, and we would have experienced real erosion. If you have a continuous of these channels, over time it develops into gully erosion. So the point is, and if you look at it as a physics point of view, the velocity of the water increases in terms of the steepness of the slope. So hilly areas, the water is moving at a specific speed, an increased speed, and this allows it to carry more soil with it. 3 management practices which can be used to prevent soil erosion. Remember, two things soil erosion practices focus on. It focuses on the slowing down of the water, and it also focuses on covering the soil, bare soil. So management practice in hilly areas, we can have strip cropping. We're planting bands instead of, clearing the entire land. So at no point all of the land is left bare. And as I said before, you will have some form of plant roots remaining to hold the soil in place. We have contour farming, and that is farming across the slope instead of up and down. And again, the aim of that is to slow down the speed of runoff water. Barriers. Depending on what is there, you can have stone barrier, you can have grass barrier, whichever barriers. Usually it's based on the availability of material. So if a farmer doesn't have enough stone, he's not going to drive somewhere and collect all of that stone and bring to the farm, because that might not be economical. So whatever is there, you can influence that. We have waterways, and what these do, they actually carry the water down the slope in a more controlled manner. We also have cover cropping, and you plant a crop that will run over the surface of the soil. And this helps to alleviate the impact of the raindrops on the soil. So remember, the raindrops, again, just like on a hill, they're coming from a high altitude, so the velocity as it hits the ground. And this will help in controlling splash erosion when soil is detached into a new location due to the impact of the raindrops. We can practice terracing. So terracing is another method where the farmer will cut the slopes into step-like structures, and what they will do in that case, it slows down the speed of the runoff water. So what the water doesn't have as it starts to build up the velocity, there's a step-like structure. Just imagine you running on a flat versus you running up a stairs. Definitely you're going to, or even running down a stairs, you're going to be moving at a little slower rate because you have to be careful of the steps. You're running straight, you can just run. So the water running straight, it's going to be able to carry more soil with it. As I said before, 2 things we aim at: slowing down the speed of the water, and of course covering the soil. So next question, farmer Jason inherited a parcel of land. Go on for, I would love to, inherit some land. Not you, know the youth them. Hey, sometimes we are there and we wish we had some land. But land, we are competing with the housing industry, and that's what is happening in Jamaica right now, where a lot of these even arable land that should be used for agricultural purposes, might be used for different reasons. He intends to use to establish a fresh fish farm to produce fish for the local market. You go, Jason. He plans to dig earthen ponds to rear his fish. At a workshop on freshwater fish production, the agricultural extension officer advised farmer Jason that there are a number of factors to consider in the establishment and management of a freshwater fish farm in the Caribbean. The agricultural extension officer stated that one of the main factors to consider in the establishment of the freshwater fish farm is the type of fish to be reared. to identify 2 freshwater fish species that can be reared on a farm, on farmer Jason's fish farm. So one of the popular ones that we know is the tilapia. You know, we have them black, but the red fish. And you know, some persons will say the machine fish. They love talk about machine fowl and machine fish. So those fishes, they are actually freshwater. And we also have the mullet. We also have the catfish. Those are 2. I think there, maybe I need to put an asterisk. I think Janga is also one of those freshwater fish. I think it is called goby, yeah, that you can rear. So just one method Farmer Jason could use to harvest the fish from his fish farm. As a proud past student of Ebony Park, we did aquaculture. You know, not only fish, but the rearing of fish is a part of it. And when we had those ponds, what we would have done is to use the net. And person on the net, you basically have a sink and a float. So you want something to sink, something heavy on the net that will sink to the bottom of the pond. And of course, the other part of the net, you will have something that we have light that is able to float. And we will gather around and we will stretch once it is harvesting time or sampling time, because we sample the fishes just to ensure that, you know, the FCR and everything is going all right. So we want to have a sink and a float, and we will move it across the pond, collect the fishes, and of course that would have been your harvesting. Outline 2 factors Farmer Jason must consider when selecting a site for establishing his fish farm. You must provide 1 reason for considering each factor. So one of the factors, let's start with the main thing, water. Now, you see, the thing is, there's a misconception that, you know, once you fill your pond, depending on other factors, and we're going to be talking about that later when we look at the second factor, the water is influenced by the temperature. So water, if you know anything about water, you know that it will change its state. So you will have evaporation happening on a daily basis, because while you have boiling, you have evaporation, and that can happen at any temperature. So once the temperature is there, heat and high temperatures will increase the evaporation. Water is lost from your pond. So you want to ensure that while you have a water source, it should be reliable. You don't want a situation where you want water today, and because the source is telling you, hey, you know, we don't have any water now, that's going to be bad for your fish business. Not only that, water should be clean. It should be free from pesticide, and it should be able to maintain and grow your fishes at a reasonable size as you progress in your fish farm. So clean water, free from pest and disease, well, pollutants rather, and it should be reliable. The next one is soil type. Now, as you know, Different soil particles will influence the physical characteristics of your soil. So we know that we have three soil particles. We have sand, silt, and clay, and a combination of those particles will give you the type of soil. Clay soil is the most appropriate. And what the farmer will do, Jason would have to do it after he creates his pond. You would have to do some form of compression. So you compress the bottom of the pond so that water doesn't go through. But overall, the particles in clay are very closely packed, and so they're very small, and there's a limited amount of space between the particles. And this is going to be at an advantage when you're looking at the concept of fish and the water. Because if the water, the downward movement, infiltration or percolation is high, then you're going to have to be reintroducing water very frequently. And of course, water is going to be one of those variable costs. And if you can minimize, that expense to you as the fish farmer, that would be good. So clay type soil, because the soil can hold, it has good water holding capacity. Now, if you don't choose clay, you're going to have to use liners. And again, that is another fun coming out of your pocket to buy plastic or the liners so that you line the bottom of your pond so that it reduces the amount of percolation and infiltration that is happening, because you want the water to stay as long as possible in the area, in the pond. Farmer Jason has established his fish farm and observed that his initial yields are low. State one reason that can contribute to farmer Jason having a poor fish yield. Again, we see that yield being used, so the amount of pound of fish, kilograms of fish that he obtained from a particular pond is low, and that is due to feed. The major cause of that, it could be even to overstocking. You know that when it comes on to a certain amount of fishes can be in a particular pond, the stocking density, we have what we call the amount of oxygen, parts per million. So ppm, that is very critical when you're growing the fish. So if you put too much fishes, the stocking density is too high, then you're going to have stunted growth. So if you're not giving them the proper feed, so if you didn't give them the proper feed, then you find that there's going to be some form of nutritional deficiency. Yeah, and the amount of feed. One of the things, and later on we're going to get into that, how we can go about alleviating these problems. So stocking density, ensuring that you don't put too much fish inside of one pond. So just one management practice that is necessary for maximizing fish yields on farmer Jason's farm. You must provide one reason for your suggested management practice. And the management practice can be anything in terms of the feed. So you can look at the feed, the stocking density, the water. These are some of the things that you can aim at. So one, the feed. And the reason is, when we talk about feed, I'm going to tell you a little thing about fishes. Their stomach is very small. So your feeding program, unlike the feeding program that you establish for a chicken, broiler birds, they constantly you want them to be feeding night and day. So we give them ad lib feed. And so you don't want them to be out of feed because you want them to put on the maximum amount of weight at the 6-week period. Now fish, the next thing why you'd want to do that with the chickens, a part of their digestive system, they have a crop that stores the food temporarily. Now the fish, the digestive system is very small. And so if you're not careful, you will waste the feed. And for any livestock enterprise, the feed is very critical. It's one of the highest input you will absorb in terms of variable costs. And we did questions prior to that, where, you know, if the variable cost is too high. So one of the things you want to do is to cut down on that variable cost. Why? What is the approach? You see, because your stomach is small, the feeding, when you do your calculations of your feed conversion ratio, and you know how much feed is supposed to be fed, so you know you have to multiply based on the amount of fishes that you have in the pond. One of the things that you have to do is to ensure that you split it up like even into 6 feeding sessions, because if you feed them one time, all of that feed will sink to the bottom of the pond, and the fishes don't eat like that. They don't go to the bottom of the pond and pick up their food. Yeah, it's not like in an aquarium. So you want to ensure that the feed, they're ready, and they will know it. While at Ebony Park, the moment you go to the area, they know when it is the time for feed, and you just see the fishes just come to the top and just be waiting on you. And as you throw the feed, they will actually just go grab and eat before it sinks to the bottom. So if they're supposed to get 2 pounds of feed, 2 kilograms of feed, you split that up into 6 different parts, and you feed them that throughout the day at different intervals, and that will maximize. So feed is critical. As we said, the reason, the type of feed, ensuring that they get enough nutrients. So it's not just to just feed, the feed should be of a high quality. So oftentimes, you know, just to have a little icebreaker, there's this meme that will normally go around, and like they would say that, hey, the food spoiled, throw it and give Brownie. Brownie is the dog, that famous dog, you know, we call every dog in Jamaica Brownie. So when you throw that food to Brownie, you expect Brownie to eat it. And you know, you have some companies that they do the ad for their food for the animal. If you're not eating it, why should the animal eat it? So at the end of the day, the feed quality is very important, and that is what will allow the animals to increase in weight, increases the FCR. Yeah? Johnny, oh my gosh, Johnny has implemented a breeding program to increase the number of rabbits on his farm. He mates the male and female rabbits as shown in figure 3. So we're seeing the male and we're seeing the female. Yeah? Right there. On the diagram in figure 3, label the reproductive process shown at A and D. So this would have been an egg, because you see fertilization happening there. So for this rabbit to release an egg, a mature ovum from her, you know, ovary, that would have been ovulation. And so in order for fertilization to occur, you know, the ovule must be released. D would have been, so at D we have parturition. That's a general term. We have the giving birth in rabbits is called kindling. So parturition is happening there. Yeah. This would have been gestation. So how long the rack or the kitten takes to develop. So outline the difference between reproductive process B and C. So let's look back at B. So B would have been fertilization. So fertilization is the union of the male and the female gametes. And we know gametes are the sex cells. We're seeing the sperm and the egg right there in fertilization. C is gestation. So while C is gestation, and that's the period from conception to birth. So while we have fertilization being in agriculture, we have fertilization, yeah, two close words, but they mean different. Fertilizing. So fertilization is the union of the male and the female gametes. Part C the process would have been gestation. How long the embryo of those young rabbits takes to develop into the mother, and then she would have given birth. State the average length of time. So, and on average, it takes rabbits like 31 days for the development from conception to birth. So once the fertilization, conception has occurred, 31 days after that, the rabbit should be giving birth. Farmer Janice was concerned about the poor level of fertility among her breeding herd, which has negatively impacted her farm income. She attended a livestock workshop hosted by the Ministry of Agriculture. The Agricultural Extension Officer advised that farmers need to consider estrus synchronization as one management practice that can increase the level of fertility of their animals and the profitability of their livestock enterprise. List 4 benefits that farmers can derive from the use of estrus synchronization in the management of their livestock herd. So 4 benefits. Now, one of the benefits is that you have so let me explain. So the female all come on heat at once. So that's what estrus synchronization will do. All of them will experience this at a particular point in time. Now, what's the benefit of that? If it is that you're going to be doing AI, especially, that's another thing, artificial insemination, and that is being carried out by an individual who is usually charging you each time they come to the farm, mark you, it's going to be less. So imagine a rabbit or a cattle, a cow comes on heat today, 2 more come on heat tomorrow, and next one come on heat next week. So each time you have to be calling in the persons, the inseminator, to do the artificial insemination, or you have to get the bull or you have to get the buck. dependent. It takes resources, right? So you can save money in terms of that one goal. Everybody, will be coming on heat, will be ovulating the same time. And so you can just call in the vet and they would have administered the whole process of AI in terms of artificially inseminating the females at once. So that's one benefit of synchronization. Even the birth process. So we know that you can better plan where all the animals would have been, it encourages the farmer to keep better record. You'll have a better record because all of them will be coming in terms of giving birth around about the same time. And so that make it easier for you to prepare the bedding. And once you do this for everybody, again, if you get into challenges in terms of the vet or in terms of the animal giving birth, you'd have to call in the vet. You can have that person on reserve maybe for 2 or 3 days because all the animals should have been giving birth around about the same time. It also allows for a uniform flock. So because everybody is coming on heat the same time, and Estrus synchronization sometimes is what they use when you're doing embryo transfer. So you couple it with that so that when you remove the embryo from the donor and put it in the surrogate, all of them would be at the same stage of development. So you allow for a uniform flock. And we said earlier on, or increases the chances of the animal becoming pregnant, because what we normally do is to couple it with the concept of artificial insemination. So just the time in the reproductive process that would be best for scheduling estrus synchronization for farmer Janice female livestock. And so one of the better times is after weaning. We also, after weaning, you want to ensure that they're not going to be cycling normally and the animals will come and eat, especially like rabbits. They tend to have things, they don't normally, it's not consistent in terms of their heat cycle. And so once you do this, it helps to eliminate the chances of every animal, thereabout. So once you finish weaning, you put them back on a cycle by when you do when you do estrus synchronization, you allow them to come and heat a specific time. And so that is easier for them to be monitored. So this brings us to the end. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors, True Petal Floral, and you can type them up and link them on Instagram. Order your floral arrangements for your different occasions, Mother's Day, for your spouse, a close friend. We want to highlight elite detailing. So again, if you're in Jamaica and you want your cars to be looking and smelling fresh and clean, again, follow them. They're on Instagram, TikTok, and also YouTube. D&J Document Center. We want, they do more than just create documents. And of course, you can also get things printed and other documentation done. This was a run through, warming you up. We want to say to all our students across the Caribbean, all the best come next week when you do your exam, depending on when you're seeing this video. The exam would have been in May, and so we want you to be successful. Remember to continue studying and practicing. This is Mr. Thomas. Thank you for choosing Buckle Down Tutoring Services.